This is my tool bag for my model railroad, and I've got I've got several tools that I want to show you guys to help you level up your model railroad workbench. Hey guys, my name is Jimmy. Welcome to Coffee and Trains. I'm drinking some Caribou coffee today. If you want to tell me what kind of coffee you are drinking, you can leave that in the comments below and it might be featured just like these guys. Cheers, everybody. That's hot. I just brewed that. These tools have helped me out so much in model railroading. Now, some of them are going to be pretty obvious, but some of them are going to be like, I never thought of using something like that. So let's go ahead and get started with something obvious here, a set of screwdrivers. Screwdrivers are essential for model railroading, especially if you're doing work on your locomotives themselves. There's also a lot of different things that need a screwdriver for it. Now, these are small screwdrivers, as you can see. I've got some Phillips head, some flathead, and this even has a couple of star bits. I'm going to link this set in the description below, but having a good set of screwdrivers is going to make things a lot easier, and having them in a carrying case like this, just trust me, is going to make your life a lot easier. I can't tell you how long I went with just having my screwdrivers just all out and about and just trying to find them, but having them in a case like this and making sure that they go back in the case when I am done has made my life a lot easier. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but that is something that can happen when you're working all over the place like sometimes I do. So screwdrivers with a case is something that is great for your model railroad workbench. Now, there's a good chance you're going to be doing a decent amount of wiring with your model railroad, so having some wire strippers or even some wire crimpers is a good tool to have on your model railroad workbench. Now, I got these from Harbor Freight, which is a budget tool store here in the States. If you don't have one of those near you, I'm going to put a link to these in the description below. Having some wire strippers and wire crimpers is going to be a really great thing to have because it makes it really easy to get those connections made, and you don't have to constantly trim back if you're using something like scissors or nippers, or even I've used my fingernails to strip some smaller wires. So having stuff like this is going to make it a lot easier to do your connections, and is going to save you a lot of time, especially if you're looking to do some nicer connections like this. You can get a stripper crimper combo right here. It has the stripping tools right here and then the crimping stuff up here, or you can just get a simple wire stripper which has all the different gauges right here. Wire strippers and wire crimpers are something great to have on your model railroad workbench. Next up is something that you've seen me use a lot, and that's these 1, 2, 3 blocks. Now, these are for precision machining and things like that, but they're also really great for holding things in place, whether they're drying or you're trying to get a nice right angle. They come in sets, and they're pretty dang heavy, so they're able to hold stuff in place, which makes them really, really useful. They've also got all these screw holes and little bolts. They usually come in sets of 2, and you can get them with the bolts that go in there. So 1, 2, 3 blocks are really, really awesome for doing all sorts of things, and they can function as another set of hands when you're trying to glue something together, or you're trying to hold something down for a long period of time and you just don't have the time to sit there and hold it down. So 1, 2, 3 blocks are one of my favorite tools for model railroading. A lot of times you have stuff that is so precise and so fragile that you don't want to use a drill for it, and that's where a pin vise comes in. These things are absolutely awesome. You can get a bunch of tiny drill bits for them and make really tiny holes, but these things are really great for doing precision work, especially on models when you need to put holes in things for maybe wiring lighting and things like that. I've done that with this, or if you're doing something like, say, putting in fence posts or things like that. Pin vices are absolutely awesome. Basically, they just have a little grip just like you would with any other drill, and you can unscrew them and you can take little tiny bits in and out, and it's really going to be bits that are also too tiny for a regular power drill or anything like that. So a pin vise is something that is extremely useful in model railroading. This next tool is a headache saver. Trust me on this, especially if you do work on your locomotives, and that is a magnetic tray. Magnetic trays, basically, they're little metal trays, and they have a magnet on the other side, and they can hold little screws and everything in place. And if you know you're doing model railroad work, you're going to have a bunch of little screws that may roll all over the place. So this is a great thing for holding those in place, and even if you drop them, a lot of times the screws will stay in place because the magnets are that strong. This is a great thing to have if you're doing DCC installations, or if you're doing any sort of electrical work with your model railroad where you have to take apart locomotives or components where you don't want to lose the screws. And this is a really great thing to have. So a magnetic tray is going to save you a lot of headache, especially when you have little tiny screws that you're working with. Speaking of saving you a headache, having a good set of helping hands is another thing that can save you a bunch of headache. Now, this is kind of a helping hands on steroids, but basically it has two little clamps that you can hold together. These are originally, this one was meant for doing circuit boards and PCBs and things like that. So, but this one's really great for holding wires in place, for doing work on tiny things. It's got two little clamps right here for hands. And then this one has a magnifying glass with a light on it, as you can see. And this one also has a place for your soldering iron. So this is a really great thing to have. There's bunches of different varieties of these, but this can really help you if you're doing wiring or tiny work, because obviously you can see what you're doing when you're working on something that small. So, and there's a lot of small things obviously in model railroading, but a good set of helping hands is going to help you out a ton, especially doing those little tiny projects. I have had so many parts fall on the ground that it's kind of funny, actually, whether I'm working on cars or locomotives, but it can get pretty frustrating, especially when you're trying to find that part and you're crawling all over the ground with a flashlight trying to see where that tiny little spring is. Well, this next thing was actually suggested to me by a viewer, and it has been a lifesaver and has kept my parts in check for the most part, in addition to the magnetic tray, and that is a lunch tray. I know that seems a little weird to have in your model railroad workbench, but this is something that basically I'll do all my work right here, and the little lip just basically keeps everything relatively in place. If I hit it or something, it really takes quite an impact to get everything falling off of this. So this is a really great thing for keeping all of your parts in place, and I've used it in DCC installations when I'm working on cars, all sorts of things like that. I put all my parts in my workspaces right here within the lunch tray, and then I am able to not lose all of my parts, even if I have a little mishap or I knock something. So this is something that is really great. Plus, if you need to move your setup, it makes it really easy to move your setup. So having a lunch tray or something similar that you can use to do your work right here so that you don't lose parts is something that is awesome for your model railroad workbench. There are all sorts of tools that you can use to level up your model railroad workbench, and I'm sure I haven't named a bunch of them on this list. So if you have some that you like, leave them in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.